Howdy, y'all. We are live. I am joined here by the man, the myth, the legend, the man that they call Thursday. So, if y'all pay attention to the background, you can see where he's recording from. So, Thursday, I believe your actual name's Josiah, correct?
Yeah, we try not to talk about that, but that is correct. Yeah,
Okay. All right.
I
So,
spent a fair amount of time in the darker corners of the internet, and we learned a couple good habits there. And one of them is you don't tell people your real name.
gotcha.
So,
Okay. Well, we can edit that part out. But anyway, so all right, cool. So Thursday. So tell us a little bit about yourself because most of us just kind of know that Neil just kind of came out of nowhere. He was Catholic Jamie, and then all of a sudden he disappeared. The title of Catholic Jamie came along, and now you're a producer, which sounds much more official. So tell us a bit about yourself.
so I am 23. I turned 24 Sunday. Um, my so I didn't graduate from college. I was working night shift at a grocery store. I was the grocery department manager at a Kroger in northwestern Indianapolis, in a really nice area of the city. But 6 12-hour night shifts a week will start to really mess with you, um, especially if you're already kind of an angry person, and I was at the time. And so I was listening to pints and podcasts and audiobooks, which is why you'll hear me if you like when I talk about books often, if people know me, they'll hear me say like I listened to that, or even on the show today, Rob McNamara and Matt and I were talking about books that we recommend Matt read while he's away. And I recommended the Space Trilogy and said I loved listening to them. I've listened to all of Lewis's fiction, but I was listening to Pints, and I forget which episode I listened to, but he mentioned that he was going to have Mark Barnes on
Hmm.
soon, and that he thought Mark Barnes was maybe the coolest person in the world, but he would never say it to his face. And I thought that was funny enough. So then I looked up the Mark Barnes episode. I think I was just listening to episodes of Pints with guests I recognized.
Mhm.
And so I listened to this Mark Barnes episode and I was blown away. Um, and I was like, absolutely just like blown away by Mark. And Mark is a good friend now. I actually produce New Polity's podcast as well, so I'm quite close with Mark Barnes now. But I was blown away by him at the time, and at the end, he said he worked for this thing called New Polity, and so I had I have a weird memory where I'll remember small things like that, and I remembered that way back, Matt had on remotely this guy named Jacob Imam who had converted from Islam and had started a
Mhm.
thing called New Polity. And then I knew he had done another episode, but I wasn't really interested in like the whole Islam to Catholicism apologetics thing. So I just passed on the episode basically.
Mhm.
But then I decided, because I was like, this Mark guy, I mean, like what he's talking about, the way he's speaking, it's genius. Um, and So I decided to go back and listen to uh, Jacob's second appearance on the podcast. And then I was even more blown away by that. And I also consider Jacob a good friend now. I probably should, you know what? Hold on just a second, actually. Um,
Oh.
Jacob is on a different podcast right now.
Oh.
Um, and yeah, that's what I thought. He's texting me with tech questions. So sorry. I'm producing while I'm on your show for somebody else's show.
Whoops.
Red cord at shop desk. So um, I was blown away by these guys. And then I had heard that Mark had a band,
Mhm.
and that Matt had said that it was genuinely good music, not just good for being Catholic music. And so I looked up Mark's band, and so I was just like, and then I started looking up the New Polity podcast, and so I was consuming just everything New Polity had to offer and all of Mark's band. And in about 2 weeks from having heard the episode with Mark to um, about 2 weeks later, almost to the day, I decided that that I hated my life in Indianapolis. I hated my job, and that I was going to move to Steubenville. And then about a week later, I did it. Um, and so this is an urban legend at this point. You'll hear it on New Polity about once a month, and I think you've heard it on Pints now like 4 times probably. but I did, and genuinely, at the time I had a 1994 Ford Ranger, and I put my mattress in the bed of the Ford Ranger on New Year's Eve, covered it with a tarp, and I put one box of books and one large box of clothes in the truck, and I drove from Indianapolis to Steubenville, December 31st of last year. And I had talked to Mark once on the phone, and so I texted Mark and told him I was in town and that I had moved and that I did it, and how and he said, "Oh, cool, I'm having a New Year's Eve party tonight." So I showed up at the New Year's Eve party, and that's where I met Jacob and Alex Plato and Mark, and some of my other close friends now, who, if people are familiar with New Polity, they'll now be familiar with Maria Brandel, who's a research assistant and intern at New Polity. I met a good friend. I met lots of my people who I now consider very close friends, brothers, and
Okay. No,
so
go. Yeah.
sorry, Jacob just sent me the funniest text ever, but I don't want to read it on your podcast.
It's okay.
Uh,
You can't be monetized. You can't be demonetized if you can never monetize in the first place.
yeah, but I don't want to. I'll tell you later. I'll send you a screenshot of it later. It's really funny. Yeah, so then I moved to Steubenville, and I sat down with Jacob and told him that I was gonna buy all into this Steubenville thing, and that if worse came to worse, when my lease was up, I found a place in about 2 days. I didn't have an apartment or a job when I left, by the way. So I left after 2 weeks of thought, 1 week of preparation without an apartment or a job, or any leads to either one, really. 2 days later, I had an apartment, and so I told Jacob I had a year-long lease, and that if worse came to worse, and I decided that the Lord didn't want me here after a year, I'd just move back to Indianapolis. But that I wanted to buy all in and really try the Steubenville thing out. So I'd love to have a job with somebody in the Catholic community working in a Catholic way. So if he knew of anybody or knew of any jobs, to please let me know. And he said to me, "Well, in a couple months, I might have a job for you. I'm starting a wood shop, and that's Steubenville Wood Shop Workshop, which I encourage everyone to check out and buy products made by our local woodworkers and artisans in Steubenville Wood Shop. It's SteubenvilleWorkshop.com. Everybody should look that up. And so I said, yeah, if you still need somebody, let me know." About 2 months later, so I worked for about 2.5 months. I drove a furniture pickup truck for a local Methodist thrift store. And
Okay.
so I drove a 16-foot box truck around and threw furniture in it for people's donations and that kind of thing. And then about 2 months later, Jacob said, "Yeah, so I'm going to start this wood shop up." My other guy, he decided, he found another job. I want to give you the job if you want it. And I said, "Well, I'm probably better than most people my age with tools. My dad was a construction worker, still is. But I don't have a super huge knowledge base, but I'd be willing to learn, and I'll work harder than anybody you'd ever hired." And
Hmm.
he said, "Okay, let's give it a go." And so I did that. So I started that in mid-March of last year. Um, and then this is almost finished. So John Blevins and Matt Marcolini um, and Mick Magic at Little Flower Media called Jacob up and said, "Hey, this kid Josiah, you told us he has like super high technical literacy and a ton of experience with the internet and just like can pick up tech skills super quick. We need a pretty basic video editor. Do you think he could learn it?"
Hmm.
And Jacob said, "I'm sure he can. Let me ask him." And I said, "Yeah, I'll give it a shot." So I gave it a shot. Turned out I was pretty good at it. And then I showed some of the work I'd done for them to Jacob. And Jacob said, "Wow, this is like you learned this in a week and a half. Like, this is amazing. This is probably more than our video editor does for producing our podcast. Would you like to produce our podcast?" So it could be local instead of sending it out, because we had been sending it out remotely. He said, "I'd rather have somebody local doing it, in line with the whole
Mhm.
Steubenville localism, than send it out. So do you want to do it?" And I said, "Yeah, of course. Like, I love the podcast. I love, like, you guys are great. I anything to help." And so I was doing that for about 3 weeks. And then I'm not sure how this happened because I wasn't privy to this conversation, but to my understanding, Matt told Jacob, your mom, and somebody else, I think it was a friend of mine, Will, that Neil was moving, and asked if they knew anybody who he should consider, and they said, "You should consider Thursday." And Jacob really pulled for me, even though now he's lost me in his wood shop. I don't work in his wood shop anymore.
Mhm.
And I had to spend a lot more time on his podcast and spend a lot more time on Pints, obviously, because one of them is much larger and has much more content to put out. But knowing these things would be the case, he pulled for me and told Matt, and really pushed for me to get the job. I sent Matt a portfolio, and I got the job, and I officially started about 9 days ago now. So that's how I became Thursday, the producer of Pints with Aquinas. So
Okay. Well, cool. Well, so as I put it in the thumbnail, so why are you called Thursday? Because that doesn't even rhyme with your real name.
no, so this goes back to
Oh,
way
we can
earlier in
back
my
it up
life.
as far as you want.
So I got into Chesterton kind of by accident, and I barely remember how it happened. But I remember in high school, I became obsessed with G.K. Chesterton. I think, and this is really weird, and I don't understand this book. So when I say I read this at the age I'm about to say that I read this at, please nobody think that I'm intelligent, because I'm very much not. I don't like I didn't graduate from college. I'm a classic midwit who just works hard at a few things and got really good at them. Um, but I read The Everlasting Man because I heard someone describe it to me, as the intellectual journey he puts out. And I was fascinated by the concept that he does in The Everlasting Man. And this is G.K. Chesterton's magnum opus. I think anybody who reads Chesterton or loves Chesterton will tell you this is his magnum opus. It's his best piece. It's his most comprehensive piece, but it's also the most Chesterton, the most complicated. It's it has the greatest magnitude of things where you'll hear things like he'll do things like, and people who read Chesterton, when I say this, will immediately know what I'm talking about. He'll make a point, and then he'll go on for like paragraphs at a time, and you'll think that he's just made the point and left it and moved on.
Mhm.
And pages or paragraphs later, he'll come back to it and expect that the reader can instantly recall.
Mhm.
And this happens to a degree in every one of his works, but in The Everlasting Man, it happens to a greater degree than any of them. Like to the point that you have the whole point of the book is that the book itself is doing this to a degree, because what he's doing is he's putting out the idea that man evolves or comes out of animal, or I wouldn't even call it evolution because he clearly disagreed with evolution if you read the book. The idea that man comes from the caveman, from the savage, is actually mirrored in Christ fulfilling humanity, in the God man fulfilling humanity. And the whole book is like this big loop where he comes back to where he started and makes this humongous single point. Um, and I was fascinated by this concept at like 13. So I read it at 13. I thought I understood it. I do not. I've read it twice since then. Still don't know if I understand that book. But I got into his fiction after reading this. And I found this book by Chesterton called The Man Who Was Thursday, A Nightmare. And I thought, the guy who writes this like incredibly dense sociological philosophical commentary wrote fiction, and it's got this weird name in it. And the cover art I had at the time, people may remember, I think it's the Penguin Random House Classics cover with like the policeman marching in parade on it, which has nothing to do with the book, by the way. So the cover is also just totally misleading. But I read this book and I loved it, and to this day, it's my favorite novel. I don't know anybody who knows what the point of it is. Nobody knows what the point of it is. Anybody who says they know what the point of The Man Who Was Thursday is lying to you. Can I tell you this?
Yes, go for
In
it.
the dedication, and I can look up the dedication poem if you want because it's down in the public domain, so I could find it in 20 seconds. But in the dedication, all of Chesterton's fiction especially is dedicated with poems to the person he's dedicating it to. He writes a poem to them.
Hmm.
And The Man Who Was Thursday is dedicated to English poet Edmund Clare Hugh Bentley. And in the dedication poem, there's this line. It says that no one but you shall understand what is written here within, but I may safely write it now and you may safely read. And Edmund Hugh Bentley confirmed before he died that he did know what this book meant, but he took the secret to his grave with him. And Chesterton also told no one else. So this is a true thing. Anybody who tells you they know what that book means is either a saint, a medium, and therefore should be,
Burned at the stake.
judged harshly, we'll go with burned at the stake. We can't be demonetized. Or is lying. So, but nobody knows what it means. But the reason I picked Thursday as my online moniker was because there is one passage in the book that describes Gabriel. There's the passage that describes his physical appearance, and then a couple chapters later you get his backstory, and it's 2 paragraphs long, and you get nothing else about it. And the only explanation is that Gabriel hated anarchy because he was surrounded with every kind of infancy from his birth. And the examples given are his mother had practically come to enforcing veganism, but by this time his father had come to defending cannibalism. He had an uncle who tried to walk around without a hat, and another who just as foolishly tried to walk around with nothing but a hat. And so then it says, being surrounded with every kind of insanity from his birth, Gabriel revolted into the only thing that was left. He revolted into sanity.
Hmm.
And as a young man who was growing up in the world we all live in, who was going to public school and so somehow came out the way I did, but still very firm in these convictions, I identified and still do very much with this passage that he was surrounded with every kind of insanity from his birth. And so when he chose to rebel, as all young people are wont to do, and it does define you later in life. So if anybody who's younger is watching, please keep in mind that while you may think your rebellion is just for now, it will define you later in life. And so in his rebellion, he rebelled into all that was left, and it was sanity. That was the only thing open to him. There was no kind of insanity left or option left to rebel into. So he just rebelled into sanity because it was all that was left to him. And I felt this way often, is that every kind of insanity that man can rebel into has already been achieved. And so the only thing that's left to choose for a young man to rebel or to revolt against is to be sane, to refuse to engage with the insanity of the world. And so I picked Thursday for this reason, for that one passage. And then there's another passage at the end of the book that I also think is very beautiful. I had chronic illness as a teenager. I still do, but it's much less now. It's kind of in remission thanks to diet and exercise and less stress in my life now. But Chesterton takes a stab at the problem of pain and the problem of suffering in a way that I'd never heard anyone say it. And this character who Gabriel accuses of being the devil comes in and tells the Council of Days that they had never suffered and therefore cannot judge anybody. And then Gabriel calls him the devil and says, I understand now why we must suffer, why the bird must suffer against the fox. And it is so that we may say to this accuser, you lie, I too have suffered. And I just fell in love with those 2 passages in the book, those 2 specific lines, because I found them both to be incredibly unique. But I identified and felt them so deeply in my heart that I felt as if they may as well have been written to me. In the existence of this inexplicable novel with an inexplicable message was justified to me with these 2 insights, that young men surrounded with insanity rebel into sanity, and that pain exists not only for our own sanctification and for a multitude of other reasons, but one of the very legitimate reasons it exists is so that we may rebuke the devil when he claims that he has suffered and we have not.
Wow.
And so those 2 passages alone, I've read the book 10 times now. Since then, about once a year since then. and that's why I picked Thursday. Um, I felt that he was great, a great character. I identified with him more than I've ever identified with anybody else in fiction. So that's why I'm Thursday. And it
Wow.
stuck because that was my online name. So when I texted Matt or messaged him through locals that I had moved to Steubenville,
Uh-huh.
he said, "Oh, that's awesome. We'll have to get coffee sometime." And then I ran into him a couple days later at Leo's in Steubenville, and I introduced myself as Thursday. Told him my real name, and he said, "Well, I'm not going to remember that probably. So can we just call you Thursday?" And I said, "Yes, let's do it." And so now he calls me Thursday, but now that he also is my boss and refers to me often on the internet in front of thousands of people know me as Thursday, the Pints producer. So
Yeah, no, it's kind of funny because whenever I originally asked the question, because I back in October I had coffee with Matt whenever I was just passing through town, and that's actually like I was there. You walked in and like I saw you outside smoking a cigarette, whatever, and it was just like, and he was just like, yeah, that's Neil's replacement, by the way, and I was just like, oh, okay, cool, and he kind of briefly told me the Thursday thing, but I didn't catch it. And so whenever I asked you here, I was kind of half expecting it to be a pretty stupid joke, not like this 20-minute explanation that had like a lot of depth and layers to it. That's pretty amazing, dude.
no, yeah, I mean, I went through a multitude of online monikers as a 20 something guy who's in lots of Discord servers will do.
Yeah.
But Thursday was the one that stuck after I changed it to that because so many people, it was so unique, and so many people asked me about it. And I got to explain this to people. And then what became a thing was that at a certain point, I don't know how familiar anybody is with John Doyle and Heck Off Kami, but I was producing his podcast, or
Mhm.
not producing. I was moderating his Discord. I don't know how I got those two things confused. They're
Yeah.
not at all similar. Um, I was moderating his Discord, and so I was one of the top 3 or 4 moderators for about 6 months. And so Thursday stuck for so long because um, the guys who were directly reporting to me, I mean, this was a large community. We were talking like 2,000 to 3,000 members at its peak. So I had mods and sub mods reporting up the ladder to me. We had a hierarchy. And so the guys who were closest to me, the 6 of them, or the 5 of them, because we were very careful that no one took the name Sunday. Because Sunday, the one thing you can know about that book is that Sunday is meant to represent God or Jesus. And so we were very careful that no one take the name Sunday, but they all took different days of the week. And so it stuck around for so long because it was this sub little inner circle. And we just called ourselves the Council of Days because that's what it's called in the book. So all my friends had their names as the other 5 days in the council. So
Nice. Okay.
yeah,
Well, that's cool. So, all right. So how did you get connected with like Mark Barnes, for instance? Like how
I
you said you'd
emailed
spoken
the
to him on the phone.
polity and said I was thinking about moving, and Mark called
Oh,
me.
okay. And he
Mark
called you.
called my cell phone and said, "Do it."
Do it, nerd. Yeah. The
He was like, "Yeah, stop thinking about it. Be brash. You'll find a place to stay. If you don't, like, we'll find somebody you can stay with."
That's funny.
Yeah.
It's also weird for me. Like, so if you told Mark Barnes, "Hey, Kyle Whittington said hi," I promise you, he would look at you and go, "I don't know who that is." But whenever I was at Franciscan in 2011, that's whenever he was still doing Bad Catholic, and for me, it was just like he's just the scrawny dishwasher. And now it's just like I was talking with Dom Del Maso, and he said, "Oh yeah, I was talking to Dr. Barnes," and I'm like, "What? Doctor, when did that happen?" So,
Yeah, he
but
just recently, within the last couple months, got his doctorate. If people are interested in the topic, we have a whole podcast, a season of our podcast on the New Polity podcast that's basically working through Mark's dissertation. So
mhm.
if people are interested in that, then they should look that up. It's Politics of Gender. So
Mm,
Mark did his dissertation in gender studies and queer theory, and taking it on from an authentically Catholic perspective that isn't just the neocon libs destroyed. And it's actually
hmm.
quite fascinating if anybody has the patience to sit through Judith Butler.
I don't know who that is.
People with virtue that much are few and far between. which is why I know Mark is a saint, because not only did he sit through it, he analyzed it. So
Okay, that's fascinating. All right, so you said you've been living in Steubenville for about a year now, right?
yeah, a year and 12 days.
A year and 12 days. So what are some like Steubenvillisms that like you didn't expect that you've like encountered so far?
What do you mean by Steubenvillisms? Things that are just unique to Steubenville, or what?
Yeah, things that like, well, I mean, you're from Indianapolis, so you know you've seen your fair share of stupidity growing up. Um,
Yeah.
but you know, like I guess from my time in Steubenville, like just the number of people walking around shirtless at any given time of the year, that was something that kind of threw me for a loop, even though I grew up in Oklahoma. So I don't know, has
Yeah.
anything stuck out to you?
Um, I think what's really weird, um, that is now normal to me to the point that I absolutely love it. And when I went home for Christmas, I was miserable because of it, is that I leave home in the morning, drive downtown, park my car on the 4th Street, and then everywhere I need to be until I go home for the night is walking distance.
Ooh, that's nice.
So I park my car on 4th Street. Uh, one block back on 3rd Street is the new Polity office. At the end of the block is Matt's office, and across the street's the coffee house. There's 3 places I can go for lunch or for dinner if I'm out that late. And so yeah, and so I drive, and where I live is less than 5 minutes from downtown Steubenville.
Hmm.
So I drive most days less than 10 minutes.
That's nice.
And so like people don't like, so we talk about going to Robinson and it's like 35 minutes away. In
Hmm.
Steubenville, we talk about going to Robinson like people in most places in America would talk about like an hour and a half drive to somewhere. Like it's a trek. Like I
Yeah.
told Matt that I might have to go to Robinson to pick up a piece of equipment at Best Buy recently, and he was like, "That's a trek. Are you sure you want to do that?" Like we
I
could
didn't
probably
know if it,
combine it with another trip, and it was like, "Nah, I mean, yeah, it's kind of far, but I'll be fine. Like I need to do it anyway. It's not a big deal." So,
the
yeah.
it's kind of like I'm going to Robinson. Does anybody else need anything? You know?
Yeah, for real. Like, yeah, I mean, people like it's I I've literally called some friends up and been like, "Hey man, I'm going to Robinson. You need anything from like Best Buy
Mhm.
or the mall or whatever?" And he's like, "Oh, yeah, actually." So, yeah.
Patrick Turner's in the chat. He's like, "There's no Best Buy in Steubenville." It's like I don't think you understand.
There's
Like,
not there's a Walmart in Steubenville,
there's a
technically.
Kroger.
There's a Kroger, there's a Walmart, there's a very sad J.C. Penney. There is a very sad Dick's Sporting Goods.
Yep.
Actually, the Dick's Sporting Goods is probably the least sad of the chain stores. Like
Yeah.
it's remarkably nice in the Dick's Sporting Goods compared to every other corporate store in Steubenville.
Yeah.
Um, now that I
Yeah.
think about it, like it's like every other corporate store in Steubenville, you go in and it's like a C plus at best, and you go in the Dick's and it's like this is like A minus. Like how do they keep it this nice? This Steubenville, like how do they keep it this nice?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
The it's kind of interesting. So like for those who watch regular know that I served in the Air Force for about 10 years. The recruiter that I talked to join the Air Force was in the Steubenville Mall, and I think that recruiter is like no longer there. Like that recruiting office is gone now.
dude,
So
there's some weird stuff in Fort Steuben Mall.
yeah.
If you guys ever want to see a weird shopping mall that it's like you know it's downhill because they're selling like renting space to random businesses that have a single location. It's like the things that would normally be in kiosks have actual like storefronts in this shopping mall. That's how run down it is. Like if it would be
Yeah.
in a kiosk in like your local mall, it's got a storefront in the Steubenville Mall. Just because people no nobody else like no real big business is renting there anymore.
Yeah.
So
Well, and plus like that area is just so out of the way, and it's just unless you are in the unless you live in Steubenville, there's no reason to go there like ever. So, but there's a
there's a
Mm,
there's no reason to come here unless you're gonna stay, and,
right.
you should all stay because it's better than where you live.
I'll agree with that. I keep saying that, if I could make it work, I would move to Steubenville in a heartbeat. Just the prospect of having Catholic neighbors. So I live in Illinois, which is
Yeah,
like in the greater St. Louis area. And, whenever I say that to most people, they think like, oh, you live in East St. Louis, which is like one of the murder capitals of the country. And it's just like, no,
I've
I live
been
a
there
little,
once.
oh, I'm sorry. Um, that, they, sorry, I read a question in there, and I'll get to Humberto. I'll get to your question here in a bit, but it's nice to live here. Like we've got a nice house, we've got a fair bit of land, and because I'm a disabled veteran, I don't have to pay Illinois property taxes, which is fantastic. But
Yeah,
it's dang. But because Illinois is such a awful state, we're never going to get Catholic neighbors living near us.
yeah,
So, um, but it's just like, dang, if I could get that Steubenville path to work, like, oh, I'd move there in a heartbeat.
yeah,
Now,
it's phenomenal, yeah. My neighbors now are great. I moved recently. My neighbors now are excellent. Beforehand, they were really cool too. So yeah.
yeah. So how does well, first off, you mentioned going to Robinson. Have you checked out Burgatory yet?
No, the only burger place I've been to in Robinson, I think I've been to the only place I've been to eat in Robinson that I think are unique to Robinson is the Wahlburger. And
Oh,
I
there's a
actually went,
Wahlburger in Robinson.
yeah, they put it in recently. I actually went to Wahlburgers with Jonathan Blevins, whose last name is in common with the person who you think it is, and he is that guy's older brother.
Oh, nice.
Uh, yeah. Um, he is a Catholic. Ninja isn't Catholic, but John, his older brother, is and runs a media company, Little Flower. And I went there with John and Jacob Imam one day because we were
Uh-huh.
going somewhere in Robinson to do a meetup with some of John's followers when John came to visit Steubenville.
Hmm.
So, yeah,
Okay.
so that's a
So,
weird story.
okay, that's pretty cool. Now, um, okay, I've got an awkward question because it's going to sound weird coming from like a 30-year-old married man. But what is the dating scene look like for a young man such as yourself? So if I'm trying to recommend to a young single man, like go to Steubenville, find your wife, is that like remotely possible or is that a pipe dream?
Oh, it's possible. It's not as easy as a person might think it would be, because the kind of person who is willing to uproot their life and take the risk to just like try Steubenville at the current stage is that's a masculine thing to do. I mean, let's just be
Mm,
honest about it. To take a risk on living in Steubenville long term as a single person um, with really no like long term prospects that are readily apparent is a very masculine thing to do. It's a very like adventurous jump out and do it thing. Um, not that this is totally impossible, right?
sure.
The best thing about Franciscan University is that new young women are showing up all the time for the cool young guys who are not going to Franciscan University. So you guys can quote me on that. Anybody who gets upset about it can. I've got the yeah. They can whine and moan all they want about it, but that is the best thing about Franciscan University.
No, like
um, and a fair amount of people stick around. But yeah, as far as like young Catholic women who are like showing up to move and live in Steubenville long term, that's a much rarer event than single guys showing up out of the blue, which happens about once every 6 months. A new
hmm,
single guy out of the blue will show up. So
okay.
I think we're
Well,
due actually.
oh,
I think we're currently due. So if you're thinking about moving to Steubenville, uh, I think we're due for a new one, a new young single guy to show up. So
okay. Okay, so that kind of leads me into another question then. So you're saying like we get it about every 6 months. That means you've kind of got your finger on the pulse of these kind of things. So like how does that work? Like how did you get yourself integrated in the community? And if a guy does show up, like who does he need to go find?
So getting integrated in the community is not difficult. Getting integrated to the degree that I am might be harder for guys my age. I think I was blessed with a unique set of circumstances,
Mhm.
because I think the heart of Steubenville is really in the community, um, especially in the summer, is not the school, um, and it's not Pints because Pints is kind of a small operation. I mean, to be realistic, Pints is Matt and me
Mhm.
um, producing a podcast, which is a great thing, and it does great stuff for the world. And I'm obviously very involved in the community, and so is Matt. But the heart and the soul of Steubenville is really um, Leo's on 4th Street, and then New Polity, which is running a lot of the like events are happening through the Harmonium Project, which is run by Mark Barnes, who's one of the fellows at New Polity. Um, and and these new businesses going up a lot. I mean, um, I think if you want to get really plugged in and integrated with the community, you need to make friends with somebody like, well, I won't say their names because I don't, but who the people who aren't public figures, but you need to get integrated with some of the guys who are starting some of these local businesses. You need to get to know Mark Barnes. You need to get to know Jacob Imam. You need to get to know, um, just some of these guys who are doing real things in the community to try to really build it.
Gotcha.
And just like if you're on board with the mission, and like you really are, and they know you are, and you know you are, like long term, you will like get plugged in. You know what I mean? It'll just
Mhm.
happen because you'll be involved with like running tents during First Friday festivals in the summer, or you'll be hanging out at the Chesterton Cigar Lounge and get to know everybody, get to know the guys there. You'll be hanging out at Leo's and get to know all the regulars there, which is another group, and then you'll be at a certain point you'll figure out who's doing things, and you'll become friends with them, and then and just chatting with your friends, they'll tell you about what they've got going on. And so then these guys who are starting some of the local and small businesses will start telling you what's coming up, what they're doing, what the holdups are, um, and and that's I wouldn't say it's impossible, um,
Mhm.
but I'd say it's a very unique set of circumstances to not be one of the people doing these things, like myself, who's just kind of I'm Matt's guy and I'm
Mhm.
Jacob's guy, um, and to know a lot of this stuff that's happening because um, not because we're trying to hide it, but just like you know what the holdup on Martoni's Pizza opening up was, and like what was going on with the city behind the scenes, or like what is the permit situation with certain things with the brewery we're building right now. Like, unless you're friends with those guys, it's not like we're trying to hide it, but like there's no reason to be talking about those things. So you just need to be friends with the people who are doing the real things.
Mhm.
And that's just if you want to be like in the weird like plugged in circle where you know all the stuff that's going on and you're trying to help with all of it. But you don't really need to be living the full Steubenville experience, like you can just be like hanging out with just people who are experiencing Steubenville and living life, and taking these fruits, and the fruits they're adding to our community is just to live here and to support those businesses, right?
Mhm.
And so you can get plugged um, in the manner. I don't want to say the degree because it suggests that it's like a better way to be plugged in than somebody else might be. But you can get plugged in the way I am. I just don't think that most people will. I don't think it's like necessary to be a part of Steubenville,
Mhm.
to be a full part of the community, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Well,
And so, yeah,
one of the thoughts that I'm having about like, okay, how do you do that? I think there's a huge overlap in the type of people that would just pack up and move to be part of the community, and the type, there's that type of person, and then the other type of person is somebody who's not gonna have problems finding their way into a community, and that Venn diagram is basically a single circle.
yeah.
So,
So the other thing that I've been talking a lot about with, well, not a lot. It's come up two or three times in the past month or so in conversations we've been having about the stages of our growth, the growth of our community, is that we're starting to get to the very first stage of the community where the people who are showing up are occasionally, and I want to be very careful about this because I don't want somebody in Steubenville who showed up recently within after me to like hear what I'm saying and think that I'm accusing them of something.
Mm.
Um, so I just want to phrase this carefully. And I'm not saying that this is wrong. I'm just saying like making an observation. We're getting to a stage in the community of Steubenville where we're starting to like see the very first stage of like a switch, like a gradual change in the reason that people are coming, Catholic people are coming. Um, we're getting to that point where we're starting to get our very first people who aren't coming to like help build an increase, but who are like pleased with what's here and just want to be a part of like what is like
Mm.
just want to live in it, and who's building it is a secondary concern, um, or maybe even tertiary, to some other factors.
So you have people showing up who are content to be the blood as opposed to the heart.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. And so we're starting to get to that stage right now, and those people are necessary. I don't want to make it seem like they're lesser.
Sure, lose all the
They're
blood out of your body.
necessary.
Watch what happens.
They're necessary, but it's such an early stage that um, you know, it's hard to say if we're ready to do that yet. Like, do we have all the stuff we need to support that on a large scale, right? Like, if that were to be the majority of people showing up to live in Steubenville, were to be people like that, would we be able to maintain? I don't think we would, right? We're still at a stage where we need growth, right? The town is still dilapidated. It still needs to be rebuilt and revitalized, and that means we still need um, more people who want to put in the work and help put in the work. And once again, I'm not saying like the people who don't like shouldn't come or like are lesser or are harming the community. Even I'm just saying like we're starting to see that, and it's really interesting to a lot of us who are whose prime goal is we just want to rebuild the town.
Mhm.
And the way we want to experience community together is by taking on this mission and this battle to rebuild the town.
Nice.
Um, and so, yeah, I hope
Okay.
I said that in a way that nobody who sees this feels called out, or because I don't have anybody in mind. To be totally honest, I literally have nobody in mind. I'm just
Oh,
yeah.
don't worry too much about it. Nobody watches this show. So, um, all right. So you mentioned like rebuilding the town, and you got different projects going on. What are some of the projects that are going on that you're most excited about?
We're starting a brewery, hopefully before the end of this year, man. I'm
Oh,
so excited about it. The building's been
who's
bought.
we?
Um, I say we like I'm involved. I say it's the royal we. There's a
Ah,
guy in town who is a jack of all trades, master of also all of the trades. Um, and one of the things he's a master of is brewing, and so he's building a brewery. He's also a master co- uh, contractor, so he's had some investors, local investors, who have uh, invested in him and given him the money to revitalize one of the buildings on our beloved 4th Street. And so he's building a brewery in there with him and a couple other guys. I think it's like maybe max 2 other guys. And so they're building a brewery out. So I'm super excited about that because his beer and his brews are excellent to die for. Best beer I've ever had in my life.
ooh.
And so he makes excellent alcohol. He makes excellent beer. He has excellent taste. And so I'm super excited about that. As far as things that are upcoming, I think that's probably the one I'm most excited about.
Ooh,
Yeah.
man, that sounds really good. Not saying that I'm like trying to fish for sponsors or anything, but it's just like if they get up and going, it's like, hi, I'd like to advertise for you. Okay, what do we need to do for you? No, that was just the end of the conversation. I'd like to advertise for you.
Yeah. It's
So,
excellent. So as far as the
so
thing that's started most recently, Martoni's Pizza on 4th.
mm,
Um, was running a booth at First Friday, fire baked pizza, and they were, trying to get some permits from the city to open their actual storefront, and they got it within the last couple weeks. And so there's a new fire baked pizza place on 4th Street. Um, Twice in the last 5 days, Matt and I have gone there for lunch and gotten the meatball subs.
nice,
So yeah,
nice. Okay, so I got a question in the chat here, and I'm going to alter it just a little bit. So obviously, there's a lot of really big name people in the Catholic sphere in Steubenville. Who would you say is like probably like the favorite person that you've met so far that you don't work with on a daily basis?
Oh, that's really tough. 'Cause
More than one answer is fine.
that narrows it down quite a bit. Are you talking about just big names? Who's my favorite person that's a big name?
Maybe not even big name, but like somebody who might have been like instrumental to your formation growing up.
Oh, so I converted in, early middle school with my dad, and my dad read Rome Sweet Home, so I guess I'd have to say Scott Hahn because I think he converted mainly because of Scott Hahn's Rome Sweet Home.
Okay,
Um, but as far as people who, like, were instrumental in my own life, in my own faith journey, I mean, I work with those guys now. I mean, it's New Polity, it's Jacob Wow, it's Mark Barnes, it's Pints with Aquinas. So, um, I really do have both of my dream jobs. I mean, I don't know
nice.
how else to
Well,
put it, how blessed I am that,
well, have you got to meet Dr. Hahn yet?
I have, yeah, actually, a couple times. I'm friends with his youngest son, so
Oh, David, he's a really good guy.
yeah, David's a great guy. So
Uh,
yeah, I have met Dr. Hahn. I went to his house for the Super Bowl last year.
oh, nice.
So and he was on New Polity, so I got to film with him. So
Yeah, Father Jeremiah was one of the first friends that I made at Franciscan.
oh yeah, excellent.
He was just at my house this past summer, so I'm hoping that he'll be able to come up for the debate in March, so that way I can hang out with him again. But one of the coolest things that like so the Hans are just such a gracious family in general, and like I've got nothing but good things to say about them. They had they hosted a murder mystery dinner party for my household. So, I was part of the Pater Noster household, which, as to what from what I understand, it's on its way to being dead. But the then just Jeremiah Hahn was one of the founding members of it. So, Dr. Hahn was our faculty sponsor. So whenever we were doing like any event or whatever, we had, you know, their family to like help us out with stuff. So when we did the murder mystery dinner party, we got to go to that house with that giant like entertaining space, and we set up like a
Yeah,
fake
it's the old
casino in there.
Bishop's Rectory to give people an idea. It used to be
Yeah.
back when the bishop lived in Steubenville. What? Passing
No,
away.
we won't get into that one. That
Um,
the
Look,
I was meeting,
Montforton is my bishop, and I owe him respect and obedience.
you know, the day that that news broke like publicly, that was the day that I was getting coffee with Matt.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about that publicly because I
I
would struggle to be charitable about it because
Well, which is
as
just a great.
as you were saying, as we were discussing earlier, I'm quite plugged in, and so I know some things that happened behind the scenes about that, and I would struggle to be charitable with the knowledge I have.
Yeah. Well, and then it's just whenever we hear things like that, I think it is an important reminder that like all of our priests and bishops, they need our prayers more than anybody else, because these guys are their decisions, their mistakes are very impactful on the lives of others, especially the lives of the faithful. So that's why like our prayers are incredibly important for them, and so for that's something that's uh, I don't know, it's important. I think it was Teresa of Avila that said, every behind every priest there's a demon fighting for them to fall. So if we have the words to criticize them, we need to have twice the number of words to pray for them. So publicly, we can leave it there.
Yeah, I think anyway, Scott Hahn lives in the Bishop's Rectory,
Yeah,
where it used to be the Bishop's Rectory, so
yeah. So that's just great family. Now, you mentioned Alex Plato and hanging out with him. So believe it or not, he used to go to the church that I go to here in St. Louis.
oh, yeah?
Uh, yeah.
Oh, that
So
doesn't surprise me because he went to SLU, yeah.
yeah. So and he's a kind of he loves Latin mass too. So St. Francis de Sales Oratory in St. Louis,
Yeah,
and
he and his wife lead our extraordinary for the mass the
mhm.
choir for the Schola for our extraordinary forum at St. Peter's,
Oh,
which
that's
is
really cool.
the main parish in Steubenville.
Yeah.
So
They we had one of the funniest thing, because I'd already watched his episode, like his first appearance on Pints, and I was in our general manager's office in the rectory here in St. Louis, and they kind of make it like the Stanley Cup, where they have basketball tournaments every year, and the winner doesn't get to keep the trophy. You just write your name on the trophy and it just goes back, and whatever. So, but I was in there and I saw this basketball tournament trophy, and I saw Alex Plato on there, and I was just like, huh. I was like, look, I was like, that name sounds familiar. Like, oh yeah, that's the same guy. And I talked to Abe Alex, and I was like, hey, is that this guy? He's like, oh yeah, that's him. And I was like, oh, interesting. And one of the funny things is that like his whenever we went to Steubenville, we're hanging out in Leo's, and I saw him there, and I texted Abe Alex, and I said, hey, Alex Plato's in here. Should I go up and go talk to him? And he goes, yeah, you should go up to him and tell him that like he may be a philosopher in the classroom, but he's trash on the court. And I was just like, oh man. So, but yeah, it's just so that was one really cool thing that like struck me about Steubenville too, was that like Leo's Coffee House is just an amazing place to just hang out.
yeah, it's really great. It's an excellent place. The people who work there are great. Most of the time, when I walk in there, I know most of the time like 4 or 5 people who are in there hanging out. So
Yeah. Yeah, that was I freaked out David Hahn last time we were there, because it was like right after our first Friday, whatever. My wife and I went there this past August just to for our anniversary, because we love the town so much. And I saw David Hahn in there, and I pointed at him and said, "Are you David Hahn?" And he looked at me. He was like, "Yeah, why?" And I was just like, "I don't know if you remember me, but because he's just gotten so tall from
yeah,
whenever I knew him as like this quirky little kid playing What I've Done by Linkin Park on the piano." And it was just, yeah. So I told him that, and we just talked to him a little bit, and it was a really cool thing. And just all the three younger Hans are the ones that like I knew. Well, I mean, no, have met at least
yeah,
extensively.
yeah.
But Megan from Filed Under Faith is asking if I work remotely, I should just move there. It's like, yes, I do work remotely, but it's the family things that are keeping us in St. Louis. But yeah, so okay, so Steubenville's a great place to live. You're enjoying it,
Yeah.
so I guess what are okay? So you're hoping that more movers and shakers show up that can help rebuild everything. Now, what was the College of St. Joseph was one of the big projects that I heard of that I thought was going to be pretty fantastic and vital toward rebuilding the town. Do you know how that's coming along?
I have to be really careful here.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
it's not.
Nothing that you can say publicly?
I'm not sure what I can say publicly
Okay.
about that. So I'm going to refrain from saying much else besides the vision is that young people be able to graduate financially net positive, certified in a trade, and with a degree in Catholic liberal arts. And this is a hole in the higher education market, a higher education sphere that does need to be filled. And it
Mhm.
needs to be filled by the best minds in the Catholic world to teach these things well, who also understand the importance of work and physical labor. And those are the guys that are involved. So keep it in your prayers. Um, and I do believe that um, fall of 2023 will be amazing.
Nice.
So that's all I know that I can say.
Okay.
So
Excellent.
yeah,
So, okay, normally I wouldn't try to get anybody to violate any sort of non-disclosure agreement, but I am going to try to get you to violate this one. What is up with that picture of Modest Mussorgsky that he gets to like poses with every guest?
there is a reason. I'm not going to tell you.
But you do know it.
I do know what the reason is, and there is one.
Okay. All right. Well, so that leaves me with basically no choice but to make up my own story, and I'll see if I can get people to help speculate with me, and we'll see if we can come up with a wild speculation. My personal theory is that it has something to do with Matt's getting funded by the CIA, possibly KGB or whatever FSB, whatever they're called now. And that's
I can shoot that one down with
oh
anybody who's seen my appearance on New Polity will know that if Matt was funded by any three-letter agency, I would not have been hired.
oh okay. Well then, well,
And
all
if
right.
anybody wants any further information on that, they can go look up the video on New Polity that I was interviewed on, and it will
Okay,
become
I
very
I, I
clear
looked for
very
that one.
quickly that three-letter agencies do not enjoy me.
That's
So,
fun. I actually looked for that interview. That isn't. I don't think that one's on YouTube. Is that like on their website now,
no,
or?
it's up there. I can find it if you want to throw it in the
Okay,
description. I can
yeah.
find it real
Well,
quick.
you send it to me, and I'll throw that one in the description. But well, cool. Well, are there any topics that we haven't touched on yet that, like, if there's just something like you're dying to get out into the world, you know, something that something we may have missed? What would that be?
I don't know if there's anything that I'm dying to get in the world. I'm pretty laid back, pretty easygoing. I really just I live what I call the John Bosco life.
Okay.
Um, and it's this quote that I read was by John Bosco, and people have tried to correct me since, and I found things close enough to it that I believe that I just have a different translation of it from like a small book I've read at some point. So I'm going to
Okay.
keep attributing it to him. Um, and if I'm wrong, I don't care because it confirms my worldview. Um, remember, kids, science is fake. So the quote is he used to say to the orphans, to the boys who he took care of at his oratory was you could do whatever you they would ask him what he should do, what they should do. Don, what should we do today? What should we do today? Do whatever you want. Just don't sin. And so I lived what I call the John Bosco life, where every morning I wake up and I do whatever I want unless it's sinning. Um, and that served me well. So as far as things I like to talk about or do, man, I just, I'm easygoing. I'm laid back. I have a good time. I drink my coffee. I smoke my cigarettes. I have a drink, most nights or a couple, and hang out with the guys. I do my work. I love my work. So I never feel like even when some people think like, oh, you're overworking, or you might be working too hard, or maybe you're having a busy week, and people were worried that I'm like overworking or going to be miserable. Like that's just not the case. I love my work. I love what I get to do. I love the people I do it with. So every second I'm working is just like, I mean, I'm just getting paid to do what I would be doing if was just totally in my free time. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Well, cool. Now I do have one final question before we close it out. But like, okay, it's often been said that you should never meet your heroes, and for better or worse, Matt Fradd is a role model for a lot of people. Now, how is it? How is Matt Fradd on camera different from like Matt Fradd the boss?
He's not.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. Can you stream things to StreamYard and like react? How did he find this?
What is this?
Benedict, hi Benedict. How did you find this? This is weird. One of my friends who lives in Steubenville, Benedict Hoffman, just texted me and said that I definitely overwork. Um, I love you, Benedict. I don't know how you found this. I didn't
Oh
tell
wow.
anybody I was doing this except for Matt. Um,
I did post it on the
sorry, I
locals, so if he's
totally
there.
forgot the quote. That's what it is. I totally forgot the question. What was the question?
The question was, how's Matt Fradd on camera and Matt Fradd the boss, and how
Oh,
much
he's
are they
not at
different?
all, actually. He's not different at all. Um, if you can stream things and we can react to them, you should look up the clip I just posted before we went live on the Pints channel and
Oh
just
boy.
skip straight to the outro. And you'll get a pretty good picture of Matt on camera and Matt the boss
Okay, well, let's see if we can do it.
as what I'm saying that they're the same person.
Okay, let's see here. Mine's for the Aquinas. You said you just posted it, huh?
Yeah, it should say like, is the SSPX really doctrinally sound?
Oh boy. All right. We're going
So we can
straight.
skip the content, so you don't have to deal with the controversy that I'm causing on purpose on the internet for clicks, shamelessly. Get over
Oh,
it.
I'm actively trying to get John Sauls on my show. So,
Well then we could talk about this actually, because I really loved this interview and I have a lot of thoughts about the reactions to it. So we could talk about it, but you should just watch the outro of this. We should watch it live. I
oh
think you'll
boy.
appreciate
Okay. So the outro, huh?
the new outro for the clips. Go about 30 seconds before the end of the clip. It's a long one. The new outro is quite long.
Oh boy.
But it is, yeah.
Okay. So let me see if I can, see if I can figure out how to do this. But, hmm.
I don't know if StreamYard does this. I know I've seen people who use StreamYard do it. I just don't know if they actually do.
Oh, here we go. Share screen. Share screen, entire screen. Here we go. All right.
Yeah,
Can you see that?
I cannot.
Chat, can you see that? Let's
They
see.
cannot.
Okay. Oh, should probably do that then,
There
huh?
we go. Yeah, that's the one.
All right. So let's see here.
Yeah, hopefully they can hear.
Do it.
I can't hear it. Can you share the audio?
Well, here, let me.
There we go.
Okay.
Thank you for watching. Please subscribe or you're a dingus. Dingus, exactly.
To refer to something one cannot or does not wish to name specifically.
You don't have to subscribe, but if you did, I'd love it. You dingus.
Like the video.
Okay, fine.
So we're using that one.
Oh boy.
So yes, Matt is the same person.
All right. Well, that's. Oh man.
Yeah.
So who came up with that? Was that you or him?
That was a combination of us joking constantly because I guess we can talk about this a little now. So during the John Salza stream,
Uh huh.
as you're aware, because you were one of the moderators, and I'm sure
That was a
probably we'll
nightmare.
see this later. It was a nightmare in the chat, and I was trying to produce while I'm doing this, and also I hope now that like you guys have seen me just kind of off the cuff, totally unthought through, talking out my ass for an hour, that you guys realize that I'm like don't think before I speak.
Uh huh.
Like I just kind of trust my instinct to say whatever's okay or right. And this translates to how I talk in text over the internet. And so I was using playful, but like clearly not, I was using insults that were clearly not actually like, I can't think of the word now. Like I wasn't angry. It was clearly just me like messing around with the whole situation and trying to find some fun in it. So like somebody asked why were there so many mods in the chat, and I replied because there are so many schismatic dorks in the chat. And like at some point somebody said, then like 3 minutes later, Michael Lofton says, "Hey guys, reminder, no personal attacks." And somebody replied, "Yeah, like calling people dorks?" Question mark. And I replied, "It was clearly a joke. Get over yourself, dingus." And like, and proceeded to like antagonize schismatics with like harmless insults like dingus, dork. I think I called somebody a nerd at one point. Like, but I was doing this all on the Pints account.
Whoops.
And no, not whoops. I was fully aware of what was happening. And I told Matt about this, and he thought it was absolutely hysterical that I was just like, yeah, I'm gonna do what I want. Like, get over it. Because of the people I was doing it to were like schismatics who were like arguing in either in bad faith or like just they were like literal schismatics or like SSPX adherents. And so Matt thought the whole thing was hilarious. I obviously thought it was hilarious. I was doing it for the laughs. And so Matt and I were joking about, oh, we got to film a new outro. He was like, yeah. And so then he started like saying, we weren't recording. He was like, subscribe. Why aren't you subscribed? And I just like leaned all the way into my microphone and was like, because you're a dingus. And so Matt and I, like, we were just joking about it, like, just like messing around, not recording, just having a good time while we were getting things ready to do the new outro recording. And I said that, and then Matt decided that that was how we were going to shoot the actual outro.
Yeah. So Chris easily says that he doesn't know how much Matt pays you, but you need a raise.
That is the fourth time Matt's been told that since I got hired, since I started, 9 days ago.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
'cause
So,
Father Altman said it when I pulled that Sherlock Holmes quote out of my head, like off the
oh
top.
wow,
Yeah. People
that's
can't,
amazing.
so it's really funny because people don't know that like I have a giant computer in front of me, like they assume they do. But
Mhm.
like a lot of times, like when somebody interjects in the producer thing, like people just kind of like, oh, okay, and then they move on because it's like a Google, like everybody's like just kind of understood that they're Googling, right?
Right.
But occasionally I'll say something and I'll do it so quick, and people don't think about it. Like he didn't have the time to Google it, but there'll be like a weird, awkward pause afterwards between me and like Matt, the guest, and me. And you'll see this in a couple of the pre-records because like I have this weird trivia knowledge thing where I just kind of have weird facts on recall that are
Mhm.
useless. Um, and so there's this weird pause because it's Matt and the guest looking over at me and me like not looking at the computer, just having said this. And they're just like not reacting to it, but also still a little like weirded out that I like knew it off the top of my head. Like the
Yeah.
Sherlock Holmes quote where Father Altman was like, pay that man more live on air. So yeah.
Oh man, that's
So yeah, Matt is the same on and off the air. Malicious, Cactoid Jim said not malicious. That's what it was. I wasn't being malicious, but I was antagonizing them
so. Yeah.
benignly.
That
So
that
yeah, Matt is the same on and off the air, and that's part of why Matt and I have so much fun together. Is because we're just like two guys having a great time doing what we love to do. So
Oh man, that's it. It's man. That sounds like a great work environment to have. But like, I just want to kind of tell the story of like the John Saul's interview chat experience. So I literally showed up to that interview to cause trouble. I I showed up to be antagonistic, and I was going to keep doing it until Haley Luia told me, Kyle, cut it out. That was my intention. And then all of a sudden, I get this pop up in the live chat that says, you've been made a moderator. And I was just like, oh no, I now have responsibility. I can't start fights here. I actually have to like keep them
yeah,
down.
don't worry about it. I did it from the owner account.
Oh man.
Yeah,
Okay.
dude, it's
Well,
just my
cool.
sense of humor to like be like have like weird debates over the internet because of how long I spent on the internet and weird places on the internet. So
Yeah, no, man, it's quite the rabbit hole. But well, hey man, this has been fun. I like laughed a lot, especially there at the very end. Cool to know that it's okay to meet your hero if that's Matt Frad to you, though I think he
don't show
would
up to his house though. Don't show
Okay,
up to
do
his
you know
house.
that story? Because I've heard him say like, "Oh yeah, somebody showed up to my house." Did that
It's
happen?
happened 4 times. Yeah.
Whoa, like same person?
No, different people.
Okay,
Somebody has showed up to the office before too.
that's strange.
Like they figured out what building it was in,
Uh-huh.
um, which isn't very hard because I've recently started telling Matt that he gives too much information, is too specific about certain locations on the internet.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, but don't show up to Matt's house. Also, not for the next 6 weeks because he's not going to be there. But
Yeah.
I will. I'll be there. And if you show up to Matt's house, I'll punch you.
Okay. Well, don't threaten me with a good time. So, oh, so okay, so obviously the big thing that's coming up is going to be the debate. Is that basically happening as soon as he gets back?
uh, let me look at my calendar, I guess. I am not sure.
Because like that's like March 2nd. He said he's going to be gone 6 weeks, and that's
I don't want to give anybody a schedule. It's not very far after he comes back, I'll say that.
wow. Yeah, that's going to be quite the
It's
wild
not
ride.
super long after he gets back. I'll say that, but I don't want to give anybody like
No, yeah, definitely don't share travel
no,
details publicly.
yeah, his travel details. So
Man, that's going to be kind of a crazy. I know a lot of people have asked me, and you're in my Discord server too. But somebody was asking, it's like, oh, I want to meet Matt Frat day of, and I'm just like, I promise you that man's going to be running around like a chicken with his head cut off all day long, and
yeah,
like
I will be
basically
too.
nobody's going to see him. So, but well, this was fun, and I'm going to try to close this out for real this time. So, all of you, thank you all for joining. This has been a blast, and God bless. Let's see if I can end this appropriately.